Mind, Spirit, or Mechanics: The Quantum Leap from Void to Being. Chapter 9. The History of the Universal Mind and Modern Universal Experience. There is a particular kind of experience that recurs across cultures, across centuries, and across the full range of human circumstances with a consistency that demands explanation. It is the experience of dissolving into the totality, of losing the boundary between self and world, inner and outer, the individual drop and the infinite ocean, and discovering that this dissolution is not annihilation but revelation. In this state, the self is experienced as identical with the universe. I am the universe, and all is one, are the characteristic reports, expressed in different languages and conceptual frameworks by mystics, philosophers, meditators, and ordinary people undergoing extraordinary circumstances throughout recorded history. The oldest and most systematic articulation of this experience comes from the Hindu tradition, specifically Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual end of the Vedas, whose greatest teacher was the 8th century philosopher Akara. Advaita Vedanta teaches that Atman, the individual self, is identical with Brahman, the universal ground of being. This identity is not metaphorical, it is the literal truth, and recognizing it is liberation, moksha. The Upanishads express this identity in their great sayings, Mahavakyas, Tat Tvam Asi, Thou art that, and Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. The practice of Advaita involves distinguishing the true self, pure, boundless consciousness, from the false self of ego, memory, habit, and desire. Its climax is a direct experience in which the boundary between self and world dissolves and the unity of Atman and Brahman is realized. Buddhism offers a different conceptual framework for a structurally similar experience. The doctrine of praditya samutpada, dependent origination, teaches that nothing exists independently, everything arises from conditions. The apparent separateness of things is an illusion. In Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva realizes the emptiness, sunyata, of all phenomena, including the self, and discovers that emptiness is not a void but a fullness, the open field from which all things arise. The Heart Sutra's formula, form is emptiness is form, expresses this insight. The experience of seeing through the illusion of separateness, realizing the interpenetration of form and emptiness, is the Buddhist equivalent of the I am the universe experience, though a Buddhist would avoid the word I, since the experience involves the dissolution of the I. Neoplatonism, founded by Plotinus in the 3rd century CE, describes a similar experience in the language of Greek philosophy. For Plotinus, ultimate reality is the one, beyond being, thought, and language, from which all things emanate. The human soul is an emanation of the One, and the goal of philosophy is to reverse this emanation, to turn inward, ascend through levels of reality, and achieve union, kenosis, with the One. Plotinus describes this union with extraordinary clarity. The soul becomes what it beholds, the distinction between seer and seen dissolves, and only a single, unified experience of pure being remains. This flight of the alone to the alone became one of the most influential descriptions of mystical experience in Western thought. Sufi Islam describes the same experience as fan, the annihilation of the self in God. Sufi poets and philosophers, Rumi, Fai, Ibn al-Arabi, Al-Alj, describe the mystic's path as a progressive stripping away of the ego until nothing remains but God. Al-Alj's declaration, Ana al-Haq, I am the truth, with al-Haq being a name of God, is the Islamic counterpart of Aham Brahmasmi. He was executed for this statement, but within Sufism it is understood not as personal divinity but as the report of a state in which the ego has vanished and only the divine remains. The I that speaks is not the person but God speaking through an emptied self. Christian mysticism offers parallel accounts. Meister Eckhart describes Gelassenheit, letting go, in which the soul releases all attachments, including its own createdness, and discovers the divine spark within. Teresa of Avila describes the interior castle, whose innermost chamber is the place of mystical marriage with God, a union so complete that the soul cannot distinguish itself from the divine. John of the Cross describes the dark night of the soul, a period of desolation that purifies the soul for union. Though Christian mystics operate within a theistic framework that distinguishes creator from creature, Their descriptions often strain or dissolve that boundary in the moment of experience. What does modern neuroscience say about these experiences? The clearest insights come from studies of psilocybin, the psychoactive compound in certain mushrooms, which reliably produces experiences of ego dissolution, cosmic unity, and the sense that self and universe are one. Robin Carhart-Harris and colleagues at Imperial College London have shown through fMRI studies that psilocybin disrupts the default mode network, the brain system that constructs and maintains the narrative self. When this network is disrupted, the brain's usual self-referential processing is interrupted, and the boundaries separating self from world become permeable or dissolve. The result is the classic mystical experience: unity, timelessness, sacredness, profound meaning, and the dissolution of the ego. Meditation produces similar effects through different mechanisms. Long-term meditators show reduced default mode network activity, reduced internal connectivity within the network, and increased connectivity between the default mode network and other systems. This loosening of the self-referential machinery allows experiences of non-dual awareness, ego dissolution, and the recognition that the self is a process, not a thing, precisely the insights described in contemplative traditions. When the brain systems that construct the sense of a separate self are quieted, whether by psilocybin, meditation, sensory deprivation, extreme stress, or certain injuries, the experience of separateness dissolves, revealing an awareness not bounded by the usual categories of self and other. This is the neurological basis of the I am the universe experience. This explanation does not debunk the experience. It deepens it. The fact that cosmic unity can be reliably induced by altering brain function shows something profound. The separate self is not a given, it is a construction. It is something the brain does, not something the brain is. When the brain stops doing it, what emerges is not nothingness but a different mode of awareness, one that is, in a precise sense, more fundamental than the everyday sense of self, because it is the awareness upon which the constructed self is built. The ancient mystics were right. There is a dimension of experience in which the boundary between self and world dissolves. But this dimension is not supernatural. It is the brain's deepest processing layer, normally hidden beneath the constructed surface of ordinary self-awareness, and accessible, for those who know how to look, through the dissolution of the very mechanisms that ordinarily conceal it.